All right, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? How's it going? I'm Is There No One Else? I am back from my weekend, and uh, this video is going to cover the 5.1.1 patch notes. Before I start diving into it, just briefly, the first patch note video that I released was about 2 hours long. I'm going to dissect that. My kind of pseudo plan is to go into each class and go through the changes and post each video for each class, while also going through the weapon lines. Like, for example, the sword and shield skill line, a lot has changed there. And so I wanted to go into that and dive into that as well. I'll be coming out with gear set reviews. So a bunch of small, tiny videos for those of you guys that are interested this week when I get some time to post them. So hopefully I have a lot of content coming for you if I get some free time. But yeah, these are the 5.1.1 patch notes. Let's dive into it. Now, as you guys know, I only discuss the PvP and combat changes. If you guys want to look at the PvE stuff, look somewhere else. I'm not an expert on any of that by any means. So, I'm not going to cover, how it changes the meta for trials and stuff. There's plenty of people that can do that. They're going over the Witches Festival this week, Crown Storm, Crown Crates, combat and gameplay. Many core combat abilities such as sprint, dodge, bash, and bar swapping can fail to occur if cast within 100 milliseconds of activating an ability. This is under investigation with high priority, and we're working on getting it fixed as quickly as possible. So, I watched the Christopher build, our video, talking about this next patch. I saw a bunch of people posting, people that I follow, and, I would be lying if I said I'd be really disappointed if it came out, but if they add a cooldown on bash, it's really going to make this game slow. And while I personally understand the need to add an animation to Dawnbreaker or skills like Incap because they hit so hard and you need to have that reactionary, for the same reason Scoria now has an animation on it, you need to give players a chance to combat what's going on. It makes sense that those types of skills would have some sort of animation that you can't immediately cancel. With that being said, if you added a bash or if you added a cooldown on bar swapping, dodging, all these sort of things, dodge rolling, it's going to make the game really slow and basically unplayable. Fighting outnumbered is already difficult enough as it is. If you're having an issue activating an ability when you need that split-second time, it's just going to make it clunky, slow, and not very fun. So it's good to see that this wasn't something they were trying to sneak in. It's good to see that this is just actually an issue with the PTS. And stuff like this happens all the time, guys. If you guys remember the last PTS, blast bones were ignoring resistances, if I remember correctly. So people were getting hit with 15 to 20k blast bones, and there was an uproar over that. The PTS is the PTS for a reason. Unless it goes live, there's nothing to really worry about. Do not delete your characters. Do not delete your gear sets. Don't do any of this. A lot of the stuff is subject to change. So, yeah. Flame Clench and Dizzying Swings animation appear out of sync for the receiving target, but not the caster. Okay. This is due to the rank up progression of the stuns. These two abilities will see adjustments. Okay. Trifocus is not currently proccing. Okay. 7th Legion is both proccing and not proccing in areas it shouldn't be. These will be fixed in a future PTS patch. Note that passives that proc are not considered ability casts. Well, that's too bad. So, if I'm reading this correctly, 7th Legion is supposed to proc when you cast an armor ability. And so the question was whether or not, using fear or surprise attack, Nightblades have a bunch of computer updates. I've been gone all weekend. Nightblades have the passive to where when you activate a skill, you get major ward and resolve. And so it was looking like 7th Legion was going to be freaking amazing for Nightblades for that reason. But it looks like, according to this, it will not work that way for Nightblades. So 7th Legion is essentially useless for Nightblades because they don't have an ability cast to give major ward and major resolve. So they can't proc 7th Legion. Is that what they're trying to say? I guess we'll have to stay tuned to this. 7th Legion I still think is solid. What somebody said in my previous video is now the way it is, you can now potentially backbar it. So yes, you get less weapon damage, but I like the health recovery over the heal, personally. It was 350 health recovery instead of the heal when you take damage. But you can now backbar the set, and you can front bar something like Agility 2H, and so you get the 350 weapon damage backbar plus, the 130. You essentially lose no weapon damage because you can now backbar 7th Legion is what I'm saying. So I think overall 7th Legion is in a very good spot, and it's going to be a very strong armor set. It just doesn't look like it's going to be for Nightblades. So Searing Heat does not currently keep up to standards with our dot audit and will be updated. Okay. Activity Finder, quests and zones. Okay. We don't care about dungeons. That's not what we're here for. Combat abilities. Stormcalling Overload. The heavy attack from this ability and its morphs can no longer be interrupted. Makes sense. You shouldn't be able to interrupt an ultimate according to their previous updates, like on Soul Assault from 2 years ago. Adric Spear, Puncturing Strikes. This ability and its morphs will now use an older version of camera controls, predating the adjustments with Murkmire. This was done to prevent many of the errors occurring explicitly with gamepad mode. Okay, so hopefully they land more consistently. I'll have to test this. Jabs and sweeps have been very hit or miss playing Stamplar sometimes, so I thought it was a lot better during the Elsewhere patch, to be honest. Like a lot better. You know, back in December, it was awful. It was so hard to play Stamplar and Magplar. But, yeah, well, I guess we'll just have to go test this out. Dawn's Wrath, Living Dark. Reduce the healing from this ability by approximately 55%. The heal will be equal to the first tick of Unstable Core, but can happen twice as frequently and will now allow for more effective power if you are constantly attacked. This was the original design, but the heal was incorrectly referencing a much stronger heal, and thus leading to the chaos many of you saw. Oops. Okay. Well, we'll have to test that too. Like I said, I'm going to go through the classes, and I'm going to just look at the abilities and everything. Restoration Staff Healing Ward. Increase the heal strength of this ability to 100% of the shield's remaining strength from 25% of its strength, but it can no longer critically strike due to it being based off a previous value. Okay, this will continue to bypass Battle Spirit. We'll continue to investigate the strength and scaling mechanisms of this ability. Okay, so it's not set in stone what Healing Ward is. I do like this change. My biggest issue with Healing Ward is you don't get you get the heal after 6 seconds, and if you're in execute range, you essentially needed another heal on your bar, because if somebody was executing you, they were just tearing through your Healing Ward. And so that gets frustrating when fighting outnumbered, and so people were foregoing Healing Ward, and they essentially made Healing Ward useless. And the entire goal is to have alternatives, and so when you go from maybe a slightly overperforming skill that was going to be broken with the Black Rose Resto to completely useless because you don't get a heal anymore, it's good to see getting this incremental heal change. From the videos I've seen, I think healing's a little too strong right now, so we'll have to see how this goes, but I think this makes sense. I think this makes a lot of sense. I think it's going to be very useful. Bow Endless Hail fixed an issue where this ability was ending before dealing all 13 ticks of damage. All right. One-Handed Shield. Shield Wall fixed an issue if you were holding block while casting this ability. You were unable to activate ground-targeted abilities. Okay. Medium Armor. Evasion. This ability in the Shuffle Morph will no longer grant Major Expedition when you take area damage. Okay. So it's just direct damage when you get Major Expedition. Elude. The Major Expedition granted from this ability will no longer trigger off area of effect damage over time effects. Okay. So it's all single target damage that procs your Major Expedition. I still think this is a great change for Medium Armor. The Medium Armor change, we'll talk about it at the end, but I think Medium Armor is looking pretty damn sexy this next patch. It's getting better and better, and I think this patch could be the patch where just Medium Armor really comes back in full force, which means people can die, which will be awesome. Soul Magic, Soul Trap. This ability in the Consuming Trap will now hit one enemy instead of up to 2. Okay. General. Protective. Reduce this item trait to 1190 physical and spell resistance at CP 160 legendary quality from 1844 to ensure its strength is similar to other jewelry traits. So, 600 physical and spell resistance per piece. That turns out to just under 2,000. It's 1,800 resistances that you're going to lose off running protective jewelry. Protective jewelry is still valuable. But if you guys watched my Magic Decade video, I kind of went in discussion on Armor Master versus Protective Jewelry. And long story short, before this change, there was basically like no real difference between backbarring Armor Master and just running Protective Jewelry. So I like this direction. I was thinking about posting a video discussing, Light Armor, Harness Magicka, Hardened Ward, and all these changes, because essentially right now, the tankiest Stam DK is its own thing. Stam DK has its own things going on, but in my opinion, the builds that rival Stam DK for tankiness are light armor users wearing essentially pirate skeleton with protective jewelry. You just don't take any damage. You can stack a lot of max magicka. Everybody's fought those pet sorks wearing armor master protective jewelry, and essentially you cannot get through their shields. And if you start to do pressure on them, they can streak. They can streak twice, get the distance, and then they heal back to full with the ridiculous heal. And it's just, at some point, they needed to address the shield size. They needed to address harness magicka sustain return, and they needed to do something about light armor builds being able to be as tanky as heavy armor. And going the protective route this makes a lot of sense. Light armor shouldn't be as tanky. You shouldn't get as high of resistances as running heavy armor. And so this makes sense. But with that being said, if this is the goal they're going to do, they need to look at Armor Master, because they haven't solved the problem by addressing protective. People are just going to go, okay, well, if I want more resistances, I'm just going to backbar Armor Master. I'll still have good damage because I can run Alfiq on the body, or I can run Necropotence on the body, and I can front bar, a Willpower Staff or an Asylum or whatever. Like, I'll still have my damage, but I'll just be super fucking tanky because every time I, slap on Harness, I get armor buff. So, I think Armor Master needs a slight tweak. If this is what they're looking to do, people are just going to bypass this correction and go straight to Armor Master. That's just my opinion. I know you have to run a 5-piece set, but you can backbar the 5-piece set. So it's essentially you're running 3 jewelry and a resto staff, or 3 jewelry and a sword and board to get, capped resistances on any light armor magicka build. So I like this direction, but I think it needs to take one step further. Item sets. Adept Rider. The major evasion from the set will now properly apply to area of effect damage. Okay. Gossamer. The major evasion from the set will now properly apply to area of effect damage. Remove the 10% chance to proc, but reduce the duration of the bonus to 2 seconds from 6 seconds. Okay, so it's 100% proc chance. Is that what that means? Interesting. We'll have to go look at Gossamer too. Note, these changes were done to improve the use case of the set while requiring more constant rate of healing to retain it. Okay. 2 seconds is a really short time, but I mean, if people are standing in your Purify and it's 100% proc chance, like, you should basically have it up all the time. But I mean, this set's kind of wasted now because everybody with rally and forward momentum gets major evasion. So unless you're running like a Magicka group, Magicka-based group, I don't think running the set is super valuable anymore. I'm just talking out loud, giving you guys ideas. But yeah, Grace of Gloom, the major evasion from the set will now, okay. His Spark, okay. So major evasion wasn't working properly for a bunch of sets. Oblivion's Foe, which is very interesting with the new Soul Trap. The set now grants up to 1,000 weapon and spell damage to your Soul Trap ability rather than increasing its damage by 100%. That's probably a good idea. Probably definitely a good idea. We'll have to look at this as well. We'll have to look at the new Soul Trap. Like I said, other videos. And the biggest one, Pirate Skeleton. Reduce the duration of the proc from this set to 10 seconds from 12 seconds. So this set used to last for 12 out of 15 seconds. So it lasted for 12 seconds, then it was a 15-second cooldown. And then increase the cooldown to 20 seconds from 15 seconds. So instead of having, 80% uptime outnumbered for major protection, you can now have 50% uptime. So this is still a pretty big nerf. The minor defile is now major defile, which is also a pretty big nerf. These changes were done to adhere the set to our itemization standards and was prioritized over others as a large call out by the community that this set was enabling far too much protection with too little drawback. Note the tooltip currently still states minor defile and will be fixed in a future PTS patch. Okay, so I'm gonna go on a small discussion about Pirate Skeleton, but I agree, Pirate Skeleton did need to be nerfed. Obviously, one of the biggest issues, like I said, is it was just it's tanky. Like more and more people were catching on to how powerful Pirate Skeleton is and basically how little damage you take when it procs. Everybody was using it. And when you get to a situation to where every class and every build can utilize Pirate Skeleton and it's effective, that's when you start to see imbalance. And I always thought that major protection on a monster set that lasts for 12 out of 15 seconds was fucking broken. And yes, the minor defile didn't really do enough to offset it. So again, once again, that's also broken. But the thing is a lot of people are going to look at the minor defile and the major defile. I don't think that's as big of a deal as you're going to lead to believe. You know, they did a huge buff to Vigor. Mutagen is also a huge buff. Healing Ward Change, that's also a huge buff. And healing is just, self-healing looks a lot stronger in this upcoming patch. And now, unless they change it, obviously this is just as it stands right now in the second week of the PTS. But going from minor to major defile with the amount of healing we're going to get isn't that big of a deal for Pirate Skeleton, in my opinion. The difference is do you want to have 10 seconds of no major protection? You know, is it worth having the major protection for 10 seconds and then no major protection for 10 seconds? And that's where it's going to become interesting. I'm going to have to test it. I don't think it's necessarily bad per se. Like if they reduce the healing in this patch, essentially Pirate Skeleton's going to go from one of the most popular monster sets to useless. If the healing stays as is, I could see a lot of people still using it. I could see quite a few people going to, you know, Bloodspawn or, you know, other resistance-based monster sets because, you know, they'd rather have the uptime of Bloodspawn over, you know, the uptime of Pirate Skeleton. But we're going to have to test this. I think these are much-needed changes. I don't know if this might be a little bit too much. I don't know. It might not be, you know, I guess we'll just have to test it, but something needed to happen. It's good to see a reduction, and it's good to see it going in the right direction, at least. So, Spectre's Eye, Major Evasion from the set will now properly apply. Okay, Thunder's Volley, Housing, Quests and Zones, UI. Yeah, so that's the end of the video, guys. Hopefully I provided, you know, some information for you. Like I said, I'm going to go through the old patch notes. I'm going to go get on the PTS. I'm going to show some things. I'm going to do some future videos with all of that. But wanted to kind of discuss this. But it looks like, you know, the cooldown that I discussed initially, the bash 100 millisecond wasn't working properly. People were worried that they were sneaking in a cooldown. It looks like that's just an issue with the game that needs to be addressed, not something that they were trying to sneak in. I like most of these changes, just like I liked most of the changes from the last patch notes. Obviously, some things are going to have to be looked at and addressed, you know, namely, in my opinion, Heroic Slash, Ransack. I think those are BS. We need to probably look at the healing. But, you know, before we can do that, we have to test some things. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide in the section below. I'm obviously behind, so if you've been watching other people and, you know, they have some updated information, you know, please keep me informed, and, you know, I'll try to make sure to keep that out of my next video. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a nice day.